Hello, today I'll be conducting a 20-minute podcast about Bosnia and Herzegovina, what's been going on there, like what all the conflicts are, um, kind of dive into the past of Bosnia, what happened in the past, and then dive into the present, and also what could happen in the future. So, with that being said, let's start the first podcast off. I'm going to start talking about the past of Bosnia. I'm going to talk about the Yugoslavian War and how that has kind of affected Bosnia to nowadays, and how what's happening now is a result of what happened back in the 1990s. So basically, in 1980, Josip Tito, who was the president of the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia from 1953 to 1980, was very popular among Yugoslavia. So, and Yugoslavia was it was just one country at the time, containing about six, seven other countries, including Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia, Serbia, and Bosnia and Montenegro. And at the time, Tito was probably the most popular candidate. I mean, he was like everybody in Yugoslavia loved him. He was such an amazing person to them, not only because it's because he got them out of World War II. He was also a general in World War II for Yugoslavia. Um, he was very um, he was very much into socialism and communism, and as you can see from 1953 to 1980, he was the only president of Yugoslavia, which you could say is a dictatorship. But personally, I would just say he was just the president because he wasn't really, acting like a dictator like Kim Jong Un or Joseph Stalin or anything like that. Tito was a lot nicer, I would say, to his people than most other you know dictators would be, if you want to say that. Tito brought everyone together because of his popularity and was able to keep everyone happy in Yugoslavia and at peace with one another. That's a big point. So Tito was basically the glue to Yugoslavia from 1953, 1980 to before 1953 in World War II. Um, so everybody loved him, and the problem was that there were so many ethnicities in Bosnia at the time. You had Serb Croats, I mean, not Bosnia, in Yugoslavia at the time. You had Slovenians, you had Bosniaks, you had Croats, you had Serbians, Macedonians, Montenegrins. I mean, all these different ethnic groups were all together at this point in time in Yugoslavia. So in 1980, unfortunately, Tito passed away because he couldn't live forever, even though everybody wanted him to. He passed away in 1980, and after his passing, they had a huge funeral and service for him, and everybody in the country was grieving and all missing him. And so after his passing in 1980, there was a pretty long 10-year stretch where Yugoslavia was in the trenches. It was pretty bad. Yugoslavia wasn't the same after 1980. The economy of Yugoslavia started to plummet, and all the different types of ethnicities, like I said, Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, Slovenians, Montenegrins, Macedonians, they all started to, I wouldn't say rise against each other. It took a while for them all to start to really hate each other. Um, I mean, throughout this 10-year time period from 1980 to 1990, nationalism was definitely on the rise in Yugoslavia. All these ethnicities wanted to have their own country. They all started protesting and having these nationalistic ideas, and the United Yugoslavian army and the government started to crumble a little bit, and things just didn't look good. And on top of that, the economy was horrible. Uh, People were losing jobs left and right. things were just not going well in Yugoslavia at this point. So in 1991, after much protest over the 10 years period and, a lot of anger with all the ethnicities towards one another, causing tensions to rise. And, you know, so in 1991, after all this has happened, Slovenia declared independence. And this was basically like the first sign of Yugoslavia falling apart. So 1991, you have Slovenia calling for independence. That same year, Croatia does the same thing. So what happened to Slovenia is that they had this thing called the 10-Day War, which basically what happened was the Yugoslav People's Army, which is mostly filled with Serbs, uh, came to Slovenia and, were attacking Slovenians for about 10 days, but not much damage was done to Slovenia. Not many casualties were made, and you know this caused Slovenia to basically win their independence in 10 days, which is very successful in my opinion. But how all this independence and nationalism started was because of Tito. So Tito, who was a communist, you know, did everything his way. So there wasn't much say for anybody else, and everybody liked him. So when you have that communism idea with him having that much power and that much love and respect of all the ethnicities that he can bring them all together, that is what really stuck Yugoslavia together. But once you lose that peace that Tito was, everything just crumbles and falls. Like all the tensions rise, all that stuff, like I just said, happens. So after Slovenia got their independence, Croatia was up to bat. Croatia won their independence too. But unfortunately, they did not, they weren't as fast at getting their independence like Slovenia was. This was because the main battles were fought in Croatia and Bosnia. And the reason for that was because that in Bosnia, there was a lot more ethnicities than any other place in Yugoslavia. In Bosnia, you had Bosniaks, Serb Bosnians, and Croats. And out of this tension, out of these ethnicities, this started a whole big war. So in Yugoslavia, it was still Yugoslavia at that point, but Bosnia was the main area for the battleground. So with the Serb Bosnians, and then the Bosniaks who were Bosnian Muslims, and the Croats, the Serb Bosnians created their own piece in Bosnia called Srpska Republika. And at the time, no one like any of the European countries recognized them, except for one, that was Serbia. And the main reason why they only needed Serbia to recognize them was so that Serbia could send troops to Srpska Republika to defend themselves against the Bosniaks and Croats. And the Serbian president at the time was Slobodan Milosevic, who was a huge nationalistic maniac for Serbians. He was a huge leader in Serbia, and he's the one that sent the troops, which were the Yugoslavian troops from Serbia to Bosnia for the Serb Bosnians. And the capital of Yugoslavia before this was in Belgrade, which is in Serbia. So that's where all the armies were. So Serbia kind of had like a little more power to them. The Serb Bosnians did because of this. And so after Serbia sent troops to Srpska Republika, this really helped the Serb Bosnians a lot against the Bosniaks and Croats, who were allies for a little bit. They're allies for about, I'd say, 2 years. And then 1993, oh, fast forward, the Bosniaks and Croats started fighting each other. And, that just made it worse for everybody else because then you have everybody fighting everybody, and no side has an opportunity to win because they're all fighting each other. In 1994, the Serbs and Croats, I mean, the Croats and Bosniaks finally came back together and started fighting the Serb Bosnians again. So up until 1994, Srpska Republika were looking like they were going to win the war. And Milosevic was looking like he was going to be able to control more of Yugoslavia with Bosnia. But what happened was that in 1994, Serbia started to not get trading supplies from the West, and the West stopped trading with Serbia. So this caused the entire economy of Serbia to plummet dramatically, and it caused many people to lose their jobs, and poverty started to rise in Serbia during that time. So what Milosevic had to do, he had to stop sending troops to the Serb Bosnians because the U.S., who was the main source of trade for Serbia, started getting involved in the war. And basically, what the U.S. did was they had a no-fly zone area over Bosnia. So basically, whatever airplane or flying object was in the air, the U.S. troops would shoot down. And so once they started getting involved with this, they stopped training with Serbia, and then Serbia was basically like, no, we still need you guys. Our economy is plummeting, so they stopped sending troops as an agreement with the U.S. So this is what really shifted the war, in my opinion. So after, um, you know, Serbia stopped sending troops to Srpska Republika, the Croats and Bosniaks started to gain ground on Srpska Republika, causing Srpska to lose a lot of land in Bosnia. Because at the time before this, they had about 70% of Bosnia locked down in the land, and Bosniaks and Croats had about 30%. But once this shift happened and troops stopped coming to Srpska Republika, Bosniaks and Croats gained about, I don't know, 60% to about 65% of Croatia back at the end of the war, and Srpska Republic only got about 35 to 30%. So, in late 1995, after U.S. got involved, all the parties, so the Croatian president, the Bosnian president, and the Serbian president, which was Milosevic, all got together and signed a peace treaty called the Dayton Accords, in which they would stop the fighting and conflict and basically end the war. And Bosnia was able to gain their own independence, but as a result, Srpska Republika still had their own federation, and they weren't a country, but there was still like a pretty big majority. About 30% of Bosnia still has Srpska Republika in it, has its own entity and kind of state and federation, which they're with their own courts and everything, and their own government. But so, and then Croatia got their independence as well. And Macedonia, I forgot about Macedonia, but they weren't really a big part. They got their independence for free. Nothing really happened to them, no conflict or anything. And at the end of the war, Kosovo, which was a very small part below Serbia, was trying to get their independence too. But to this day, Serbia still does not recognize Kosovo as a country, even though a lot of other countries recognize Kosovo. So that conflict is still going on today. And that was basically the war. It lasted from 1991 to 1995. So, as we move on to present times, let's talk about the Bosnian government structure, because this is what really led to some conflict nowadays, which we can see a kind of a reliving of what happened in 1995 with the ethnic tensions in Bosnia. So in 1996, after the Dayton Accords were signed in 1995, Bosnia was split into two entities. Republic Srpska, which is filled up mostly Serbs by Serbians in the north and east borders, And then also we just have regular Bosnia as their own entity. Bosnia is also filled with 10 separate cantons or states slash provinces that have their own elections and legislators and are mostly filled with Bosniaks. There are also Croats in these provinces or cantons. And Bosnia and Srpska are joined together by joint central institutions. All important decisions must be backed by both sides. The three levels of governance in Bosnia. So at the bottom, we have the canton system, which is basically the 10 cantons I was talking about. They make everyday decisions without any debate, which makes it a lot easier for things to get passed, like education reforms or, just healthcare in general, just stuff like that. Everyday decisions are passed without any debate needed in those cantons. In the middle level of governance, we have the Canton Federation. It's not as important as the name pertains to it, because basically it's Srpska Republika. That's the main, like, middle uh area. It's like the main um you know entity that's comprised in the Canton Federation. And usually Srpska Republika falls here because it doesn't have any cantons. And basically, since there are no cantons in there in Srpska Republika, they just have a national assembly, which is also responsible for making day-to-day policies in Srpska Republika. And at the top, the level of governance, we have these state-level institutions. This basically comprises of the president, the House of Representatives, which Bosnia has, and Bosnia also has a House of Peoples, which is actually kind of like the um, House of Lords in the UK, where basically they just have people look over laws and policies that are created and determine whether those are constitutional or legal or not. So basically, they're kind of like a Supreme Court in that area. And then at the very top, we have the High Representative, which is a foreign politician appointed by the UN and has near infinite powers. So the High Representative was appointed by the UN after the fallout of the Yugoslavian War to basically help keep the peace and help keep things moving and make sure everything is on task and on point and that nothing bad is going on. Make sure everybody's happy and that things are running smoothly in Bosnia. So this kind of creates some internal problems with the locals of Bosnia who don't really appreciate and like the High Representative because they don't feel like he is representing Bosnia for who they are, and they don't see him as somebody that is well fit to lead the country. And basically, that's about the entire Bosnian system. And what's going on right now is that the president of Srpska Republika, who is Milorad Dodik, has he has a couple of times Milorad Dodik has basically not abided with the Bosnian laws, saying that he is doing it for the will of his people, which are mainly Serb Bosnians. So this has started some more controversy in Bosnia with the Srpska Republika not following laws and orders and policies that are created by the Bosnian court, Supreme Court, and laws that are passed in their government. And Milorad Dodik is also a big fan of Vladimir Putin. And we all know how bad Vladimir Putin is. So this has also created a lot more controversy within Bosnia with just like everything that's been going on in the last 25 years. And, Serbs claiming to be still their own country, which they aren't. They're still a part of Bosnia. And Milorad Dodik kind of being the head guy for that. So let's talk about what might happen, or what prediction wise, what could happen in the future. in my eyes, I feel like Bosnia, I feel like they can't be this way for very much longer. I just don't feel like with what's going on with the Serbs and all the different ethnicities that are inside of Bosnia, either one, they need to change the outline of Bosnia and help create Serbia Republica as their own country. That's one thing that they could do to stop with all the disagreements and everything that's going on, which would be a lot more peaceful than what I'm going to say is number two, which could be a war could happen again. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying that it could happen within the next 10, 15 years if these small conflicts inside of Bosnia or tensions or nationalism starts to rise more and more, we could see tensions start to flare and a war break out again. Another problem with Bosnia that I have not said yet is that Bosnia is not a very rich country. They're very poor. It's the healthcare and the health system in Bosnia is one of the worst in all of Europe and probably in the world. I ain't gonna lie. Um, I do have an aunt, a great aunt that lives in Bosnia. Her name is Ankica, and she has lived there her entire life. And basically, during COVID, a lot of her friends passed away because of the horrible healthcare and, um, hospitals that and doctors who didn't know much, and they don't have enough medicine in Bosnia to help, cure these people. So it really sparks debate on, you know, Bosnia needing more help from the UN or the EU can come in and help give them more services with healthcare or with giving them more medicines that they need. And honestly, last time I went to Bosnia was in 2014, and I was about 10 years old. And, whenever you walk around the streets in Bosnia, there's a lot of homeless people. There's people who, they're just sitting there on the side of the roads and, you know, are sitting there with, newspaper and uh, having no food or water. And it's something really sad that you don't want to see. But at the same time, you can't do anything about it. So, you know, the economy in Bosnia is not the greatest. I know that, you know, employment wise, they're looking a little better on the employment side, but there's just a lot of problems in Bosnia that need to be fixed. And if these problems with ethnic tensions continue to rise, that might spark even more problems, which Bosnia, you know, I'm just saying all this I'm just trying to say is Bosnia is not stable right now. And it's kind of sad that countries like the US, who are major players in the global system, are not trying to help fix those problems. And I understand we have our own problems internally in the US and with major countries like Russia and the Ukraine war and North Korea and all that. But if you have these small proxy, not, I mean, small wars that go on in these areas, they might spark more major wars that could cause more problems and more conflict, which the world doesn't need right now. So all that to say is Bosnia, you know, from a realist point of view, Bosnia is in a pretty bad situation. They could, I'm saying they could be in a war in the next 15 years. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if I'm looking for more like a liberalism point of view, I think if you're looking at from more liberalism point of view, I think Bosnia can work out agreements. They have done before. They can work out peace agreements. I know that everybody in Bosnia does not want to fight. They don't want to start another war. Right now, everybody's at peace with one another. But when you have these small issues with Serbia Republica not accepting laws and all these small things that don't seem like big things yet, but they are small things that could rise into big things. People will start to, you know, gain more nationalistic point of views and stuff. So I'm hoping maybe in the next 10, 15 years, things will look better in Bosnia. I'm hoping that we can get more um, more modern day technologies, health wise, and more medicines over there, and to help out more of the poverty people in Bosnia, which are in need of a lot of help. So I'm hoping I can go back to Bosnia soon and go see what's what's like currently over there. Um, but yeah, I don't think Bosnia gets talked about enough. So, but this is my portfolio, first one. Um, it was really fun researching about Bosnia, and I'm hoping to do some more research about it myself just in my free time. And I'm really excited about this class. And thank you, Professor, for letting me do this. And that's it. That's my podcast. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know if I did anything wrong or anything. Just let it out. Appreciate it.